So let's now quickly just mention a couple of points that this course will not be about. And now the first thing is we will briefly touch this in the beginning, that this is not about the old UI systems that you had, I don't know, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, probably for most people, if you didn't use the preview version of UI Toolkit. So we are not touching those things. We are not doing like a little bit in this and a little bit of that, except from like one little oral discussion. We will not have any comparisons about those things. We are focusing on UI Toolkit. We are focusing on how it's doing, how it's solving the problems, and which is also probably where the future is for Unity. So I guess we should all learn it basically, except in a couple of edge cases probably. But again, like there are other tutorials for the old UI systems. We are not touching them. This is purely a course on UI Toolkit and Unity, obviously, because obviously we'll also need just general Unity C# code to make our little games, our little examples, but we will not touch the old canvas, the old event system, stuff like that. That's not part of this course. And just as I mentioned with the runtime UI thing, this is not a course on editor scripting, although a lot of the stuff that we will do will also help you with editor scripting. So I guess if you take the course and then you take another 1 or 2 hour course on the basics of editor scripting with UI Toolkit, you will be able to do a lot of stuff for editor scripting as well. But if you are specifically looking into specific things on editor scripting, this will not, you will not find this in this course. Then another thing that this course is not about, now, one way to how you could have started, how you can start UI courses in general in something like Unity is obviously you make a big game and then you try to put some UI over the game. That's obviously possible, but the problem is you then always get at those points where you have those mixed problems where it's not only a UI problem, but it's also a problem with the game that you then have to introduce, where you have to show the game code, where you have to do stuff like that. And that's what I wanted to avoid. So the idea was to keep the course as focused as possible, with showing examples that are just as complicated as they have to be to support the UI thing that we are trying to solve, but not introduce anything more. So we will basically only be using one game object all the time with the UI component, and that's basically it. All the rest will be very minimalistic background code. Except for the final game, there is a little bit more code going on, but this is still a pure UI game in the end. So there will be some back-end logic, some game logic, but still everything that you see on the screen will be pure UI. So we are focusing on UI, and by that on 2D game development. We are not going to play around too much with game objects, with prefabs, with the general stuff that you have to solve in Unity. I think that's the better approach, because that way you can focus on what you really try to teach and what you really try to achieve. And I think it's not, the way that this is set up, it's not too complicated to transfer this to a real game and then use it for whatever you need. And the final thing that this is not about, it's not about things like programming patterns. And what I mean by that is, obviously, we are going to try to write like nice code wherever it's possible. We are not going to try to, I don't know, name our variables, blah, blah, whatever, just because we don't care. But again, the idea is to keep this course as focused as possible, and that way I will try to introduce as few sort of other topics as I can. And so whenever we will have chapters that are a little bit more complicated, something like data binding, code-wise a little bit more complicated, there will be some programming, some general programming ideas in it. And also in the final game project, we will have a very simple architecture setup, but this is by no means the focus of the course, and we will also write sometimes a bit, yeah, not more code, but if we can choose between the simpler code or a little bit more complicated code that would be, that would, I don't know, apply some patterns, that will be a little bit more how you would write a real bigger software, we always choose the simpler version in order to have as few other, as little distraction as possible. And again, so if you expect a gigantic game that is following all the clean code best practices and is using, I don't know, a lot of interfaces, is trying to just communicate with events, stuff like that. This is not going to happen, because then in one or the other way we'd have to introduce all those things, and I'm trying to avoid this wherever possible and just keep it simple. However, I still think that the code that we're writing is somewhat interesting, and it is still quite a lot of code, to be honest. And I think that's it, basically. Now, again, the key takeaway is what can you expect from this course? When you're done with this course, my goal is that you're able to have a solid base to be able to go out and do your own games and your own stuff. And I think that when you're really done the course, you should be able to know where to look and to have a tool for most situations that you might face in UI development. Obviously, not each and every one of them, but I think you will have at least inspirations and some starting tool for almost each and every situation, and you will always have to kind of more competence depending on where you started, more competence in finding solutions on your own and to knowing where to look for further help and how to interpret stuff like new documentation and things like that. So again, that's the basic idea. Be able to help yourself when you're done with the course. And that is sort of it for a start. If you're interested, look at one of the next videos that will go a little bit more in depth what the specific chapters are about. So I hope I see you in one of the upcoming videos.